Hi everyone, welcome to the channel. My name is Nick Cosgrove and I'm back with this week's No Filter Q&A. This is the episode where I answer all questions related to diet, training, and supplementation that I received over the last 7 days from our in-house clients, online clients, as well as a few of our online followers. Remember, if you have any questions related to your nutritional plan, workout program, supplements you are currently taking, not taking, or considering taking, please feel free to email me those questions at nick@foreverfitperformance.com, or you can DM me your questions on my Instagram at fitcosgrove_. All right, let's get started with this week's no filter Q&A with question number one. Nick, what are some good exercises for building a V-shaped back? Good question. So if your focus is to develop that V taper in the back, that illusion of a small waist, wide lats. I mean, who doesn't like that look, that V taper? That's a look that all aspiring bodybuilders look to achieve. That's a look that I've looked to achieve my whole life. That V shape, it shows power, it shows strength, it shows that you're fit, healthy. My recommendation to you during your back workouts is you really want to focus on your pull down movements. And in some cases, even your pull up movements. Okay. So pull down movements could be anything from an overhand grip, also known as a pronated grip, lat pull down. That will work your upper lats. You could do a supinated grip, also known as an underhand grip, reverse grip pull down. That'll work your lower lats. Or you could do what we call a neutral grip, which is palms facing in, using one of those triangular bars, working your inner lats of a closed grip pull down. Okay, so those are three great pull down movements that will help develop that V taper. Now, with pull-ups are a tricky thing because a lot of people think pull-ups are an excellent exercise. And I wouldn't argue with that. However, I find for a lot of people, pull-ups don't work. And I include myself in that. I find for a lot of people, it depends on the length of your brachialis, okay, so your bicep tendon, in addition, in length, in addition to your carpal, to your wrist. So the length from your wrist to your bicep. A lot of people have longer arms. So for people with longer arms, it's very difficult for them to do chin-ups correctly. Another thing a lot of people struggle with when doing chin-ups is that they use a lot of momentum. So they do a lot of swinging back and forth. So when I used to do chin-ups, I found that I felt most of the exercise in my biceps. So I wasn't really engaging my lats. But when I started doing pull downs, I could really feel my lats. And I took my biceps out of the equation by using grabbers or lifting straps. That's another way to help take your brachialis out of the movement when doing any back exercise for that matter, whether you're doing pull downs, pull ups, seated rows, T-bar rows, bent over barbell rows, etc. Okay, so I do recommend wearing straps or grabbers just to assist with your grip so you're not using your bicep. So if you're someone that likes doing chin-ups and you feel that you can do them without swinging and you don't feel them in your biceps, my recommendation is to do a few sets of reverse grip chin-ups, so an underhand supinated grip, or you could do some pronated grip chin-ups as well. But the exercises that I found worked best for me over the years were doing the three that I mentioned at the beginning of this question, which was the overhand grip, lat pull down, reverse grip pull downs, and then the closed grip pull downs. Those I felt really helped develop that V taper for me. All right, next question. Uh, Nick, I've been training consistently in the gym 5 times a week for the last 6 months. I'm not really seeing any results with my body though. Do you think this is more diet or training related? It's really hard for me to answer this question unless I work with you, okay? Because it could be either or it could be both, right? But chances are that if you're not seeing results after training consistently in the gym for 6 months, you have to look back and see, okay, what am I doing in the gym? Right? That's number one. What are you doing when you go to the gym? Going to the gym 5, 6 times a week isn't enough. You need to make sure that you're in there fully focused, making sure you're using lots of reps, lots of sets, heavy weight, minimal rest periods, constantly changing up the sequences of your workouts. And I don't mean changing up the exercises, but making sure that you're going in with a plan and also making sure that, if something becomes stagnant, as in your results, it's time to switch things up. Okay. So if you find that, oh, I do deadlifts and my lower back is killing me, well, take deadlifts out because that's going to impact how you're doing your squats. If you're doing barbell back squats and you've hit a plateau, maybe try switching up the sequence of that exercise, putting in towards maybe the end of your workout as opposed to the beginning. So you're pre-exhausting the quadriceps, hamstrings, and glutes. This is an example of what I'm telling you to do is if you've noticed that you've become stagnant with your results in the gym. But for a lot of people, it's because they're not training intensely enough in the gym. And I'm not saying that's you, but I'm saying for a lot of people that I see train on their own, they're not training with the utmost amount of intensity. And if you're not training for intensity, you're really not going to see changes in your physique. You're kind of wasting your time. Okay. I trained two guys this morning. They knocked out 62 sets in 60 minutes. You don't have to do that much volume, but at the same time, that gives you an idea of the intensity of that workout. And the weights were not light. We did a back workout, right? So I always tell people, if you're in the gym for 60 minutes, you should be able to get in at least 40 sets. If you're in the gym for 45 minutes, you should be able to get in at least 30 sets. Okay. And that to me is a high volume, high intensity workout. So that's the one thing I'd be looking at first is, how intense are you training? Are you paying attention to what's going on in the gym? Are you just going in there and doing the same routine over and over again and expecting a different result? So really looking back at what you've been doing as far as your sets, as far as your reps, your rest periods, and being critical and saying, where can I make changes? And then as far as the diet's concerned, well, this is a big one. I know a lot of people who train and they train hard, but then outside of the gym, their diet goes to shit. There's people that are still out there that think if they go out to a restaurant and they order a salad, they're being healthy. Not necessarily. There's a lot of crap on those salads. There's a lot of crap in those salads. Don't kid yourself if you're having a Cobb salad and think you're being healthy. If you're someone who's trying to actually build muscle and lose fat, that particular food, for example, is not a food that I would eat, right? It's not something that's going to be calorie friendly. It's not going to be muscle building friendly. It's not going to be fat loss friendly. So your best bet is to make your meals yourself or have maybe a food company prep them for you, because then you know exactly what's going into them. Okay. Every show I ever competed in, I always cooked all my own meals because I knew exactly what I was putting in there. I knew exactly how many carbs, how much protein, how much fat was in every single meal that I ate. So I knew exactly how many calories I needed to burn when I would go do my cardio. I knew exactly how many calories I needed to perform a leg day. Okay. It was like a machine, but that's what worked. So I needed to get to point A to point B. I had to make sure my diet was dialed in and that my training program was put together properly and customized specifically for me. So that's my recommendation to you is to look at both and see where changes need to be made. If you don't know where changes need to be made, that's okay. You're not a professional. In that case, hire a professional, hire a reputable, knowledgeable, and experienced coach that can help guide you along the way with both your diet, training, and supplementation. It takes all the guesswork out of it for you. It makes it much more easier. You can just focus on your workouts. You can focus on, okay, this is my meal plan. I just have to put these meals together and go in and do it. Okay. If you have a game plan that's laid out for you, bearing it's a good game plan, you're going to see results. You're going to feel results and you're going to achieve the transformation that you want to achieve with your physique and your health and your fitness. All right. Next question. Nick, can you build muscle with just body weight exercises? I don't really like going to the gym, but would like to add on some muscle to my body. So here's the thing with body weight exercises. Body weight exercises such as push-ups, sit-ups, pull-ups, they're great for building muscular endurance. Why? Because the only way that you can increase intensity on body weight exercises is by increasing your reps. You can't increase the weight. If you're doing body weight, unless you yourself are putting on weight, you're not going to increase the resistance that you're using, right? So you're limited. There's a plateau that you're going to hit. There's a ceiling to what you can achieve. Say you you can do 10 push-ups and you do that for a week. And then on week 2, you can do 15 push-ups. Week 3, you can do 20 push-ups and so on and so on. What are you going to do? 200 push-ups a day? The problem with that is in the case of push-ups, for example, you're putting a lot of stress on your rotator cuffs and your elbows, especially if you're doing the movement over and over again, as in, day out, and with high repetitions. So I wouldn't recommend taking this approach in order to build muscle. Doing body weight exercises when you're in a jam, say you can't get to the gym, you're traveling, you're in a hotel room, sure. Why not? Knock out 50 push-ups, 50 sit-ups. If you can find somewhere to do some chin-ups or some body weight squats, do that as well. Maybe do a little circuit. That's fine. But it's not something that I would recommend doing daily, nor is it something I'd recommend with the expectation of building actual muscle. Okay. Your muscles, in order to build size, that lean, dense muscle, they need resistance. They need lots of resistance. They need different planes of motion. They need different ranges of motion. They need a variation of different movements to help build the overall physique. And that's what's great about going to the gym. It's like a big playground. You've got all this access to machines, cables, dumbbells, barbells, Bosu balls, Swiss balls, kettlebells. You don't have that if you're just doing body weight exercises. Okay. So I'm not going to tell you not to do it. However, I would avoid doing it every day. And you have to get the expectation of seeing dramatic changes in your physique by doing body weight exercises alone because it's not going to happen. Okay. You can keep yourself fit. You can keep yourself in shape by just making sure you're moving. Of course, go for a few runs a week. You're doing your sit-ups, you're doing your push-ups and squats, jumping jacks, whatever it is, burpees, although I don't recommend doing burpees, but sure. But you're not going to see dramatic changes in your physique. If you want to see dramatic changes in your physique, you have to go to the gym. We don't always get to do what we like doing. I can tell you right now that if you were to ask 50% of my roster, they tell you they don't like going to the gym, but they know in order to achieve the results they want to achieve with their health, fitness, and physique, they have to go to the gym. So it just comes down to the question of how bad do you want it. If you don't want it that bad, do body weight exercises. But if you really want to build muscle, you've got to get your ass in the gym. All right. Okay. Nick, I read that testosterone in men starts to deplete 3 to 5% each year after the age of 25. If this is true, is it even possible to still build muscle in your 40s? Absolutely, it's possible to build muscle in your 40s. And not only that, you can actually reverse the decrease in testosterone by incorporating weights alone. So if you start weight training, whether you're in your 30s, 40s, even your 50s, you can actually increase your natural testosterone. Okay. Because again, what does weight training do? It builds muscle. What do you need to build muscle? Testosterone. So if your body is saying, hey, we need to build muscle because now we're training with heavier weights, there's a demand on the body as far as resistance and hypertrophy. Guess what's going to happen? Your body's going to create more testosterone naturally. So that can counter the effects of decreasing testosterone as you get older. And that's why it's so important for men and for women, but for men to train with weights as they get older and not stop training with weights or not train with weights altogether. Okay. Because if you are a man who is fairly sedentary, or even if you're not sedentary and you just, you run with, for example, or you ski and you don't do any weight training, you are at risk for lower testosterone levels. Absolutely. You talk to most men who work out regularly, and guys, I'm talking about guys in their 40s and 50s, they're fine. Their testosterone levels are good. They feel good because they're weight training, because they've got muscle. So if you want to counter that effect, my recommendation is get in the gym. So yes, you can build muscle into your 40s. You can build muscle into your 50s. Hell, you can even do it in your 60s. Now, as people get older, right? We're talking in their 60s or 70s, there can be a decrease in muscle mass, but here's the thing is it's just more wear and tear on your body, right? So you have more mileage on your body. There might be some lingering injuries. You put more stress on your knees, on your ligaments, on your joints. You're on the planet for 60 plus years. Of course, there might be some wear and tear, and there could be some muscle atrophy, of course, right? But I argue with that theory too, because we haven't seen enough long-term studies on the younger generation, as in my generation, and maybe the generation just above me, as in people in their late 40s, early 50s, who have been training with weights since they were in their 20s. You look at most people who are now in their 70s, most of them weren't training with weights when they were in their 20s. So you can't just say, well, this is what's going to happen to you when you're in your 70s and 80s. If you yourself have been training with weights consistently since you were in your teens, early 20s, and so on. So I think as, my generation and the generation above me starts to get older, we'll see the benefits of regular exercise, regular weight training more and more people will be saying, hey, you know what? I need to get in the gym now. Because if I want to look like this guy who's in his 70s, who looks amazing because he's been training with weights for like 5, 6 decades, this is what I need to do. I don't want to look like this other guy who hasn't been doing anything, got a big belly and completely sedentary lifestyle and has all these health issues. So I think it's something that we'll see more and more with time because people are more fit, more healthy now than they were, let's say, 30, 40 years ago. There's more people in the gym now than ever before, both men and women. So if you are serious, if you're a guy and you're serious about keeping your testosterone levels high or within at least normal range, and you don't want to have to go on TRT therapy, nothing wrong with going on TRT therapy, but if you testosterone replacement therapy, but if you want to avoid that, my recommendation, get your ass in the gym and train with weights on a regular basis because it really does help keep your testosterone levels within normal to high range, which is a good thing, not a bad thing. All right. Nick, I'm a bit worried of getting injured training legs in the gym. I tore my quadricep last year skiing, and even though it's fully recovered, the thought of doing any leg exercises scares me. Are there any tips that you can recommend to prevent an injury from reoccurring in my lower body? I know I need to get back and start training legs again. Okay, so my recommendation to you is you make sure you warm up sufficiently. Okay, and I don't mean walking on a treadmill. Okay, so what I mean with warming up, especially for a leg workout, do some dynamic stretches, stretches that involve movement. That could be knee kicks, that could be running in a spot for, 15, 20 seconds, getting the blood flowing in your lower body before you stimulate it with weights. Okay, so I had a client who recently had reconstructive knee surgery. Okay. And he's been back in the gym training legs with me for the past 6 weeks. I always start his workouts off with walking lunges. No weights, just body weight. Why? Because that helps release synovial fluid into his joints. It helps release synovial fluid into his patella, into the meniscus, into hip abductors and hip flexors. So his joints and ligaments are all warmed up. Then and only then do we get into the squat rack. We don't just jump into the squat rack with a heavy weight. We also warm up by pyramiding our weights. We'll start with maybe 25 aside of the squat rack on the bar. Okay, and then we'll start with maybe 35 and go 45. So we're gradually increasing the weight. And remember, just because you increase the weight one week doesn't mean you're going to increase the weight the following week. Every workout's different. So you got to really monitor. When I'm watching someone's form, like your form looks good, but your range of motion is not as good right now. So we're going to keep the weight the same, or we're going to decrease the weight. And that's why having that second set of eyes with a trainer really helps, because you might feel like, hey, I can increase the weight today, but you might not be seeing what it looks like from the back end. And if the back end's looking shallow, or it looks like you're shaky, or it looks like your knees are pronating inwards, I'm talking about squat here, then maybe it's time not to increase the weight. Okay. So you want to make sure that you warm up sufficiently. If you're working in a commercial gym and you have access to a leg extension machine, where you're kicking your legs up and down, that will also help release synovial fluid into the joints. But my recommendation is not to just go in and start with a heavy compound lift like a squat, okay, because that's a surefire way to get injury and potentially injure that muscle again. Problem is, when you've torn your quadricep or torn your bicep, even though it's recovered now, you've had the surgery, you've rested, you're at risk for building up scar tissue in that area if you don't let it recover properly in the gym. And what I mean by that is recovering when you're training. Okay. So even if you've taken the 6 months off or whatever your doctor recommends, and now you're back in the gym, you're still at risk for forming scar tissue in that area. So you have to be so careful with how you train it and how you stimulate those muscle fibers. And that's why I recommend, in the case of a torn quadricep, is you warm up with some walking lunges, which is your body weight. Try to really focus on the range of motion. Try to get that depth. Try to make sure you're using, your full, if you can, your full mobility, full flexibility. So you're stretching out those quads, getting a good contraction to hamstrings and the glutes. Then move on to exercises like barbell back squats, maybe some hack squats and leg press. Really monitor how that quad is feeling. If you're starting to feel like it's giving out or it's cramping up or weakening, take the weight off, or even call the leg workout early. But that's how you're going to progress, okay? But don't just go from 0 to 100, because that's a surefire way to re-injure the injury and form scar tissue. And if you have a lot of scar tissue around that area, you're in trouble, because that's going to really affect your mobility and flexibility with other exercises that you do when it comes to leg training. All right. Okay. Nick, how do you recommend training your shoulders safely when someone has a history of rotator cuff injuries? Very good question. So what I typically do when I'm doing a shoulder workout with clients, I like to play a little game with how I hit the shoulders. Now, what I mean by that is, when you look at your shoulders as a whole, you've got your anterior deltoid, known as your front head. You've got your medial deltoid, known as your side head. You've got your posterior deltoid, known as the back head. And then you have your trapezius, which is like an upside down triangle in the back near your rhomboids and scapula. So if you want to hit each of those areas of the shoulder girdle, you've got 4 exercises right there. But what I'll typically do is I'll rotate. So I like to actually get each of those heads with 2 exercises, and with the traps, I'll usually give 1 exercise, because with traps, you're also working your traps when you do back days. So when you're doing rows and pull downs and pull ups, you're working your traps indirectly. So I only give traps 1 exercise on a shoulder day. So if I'm doing shoulders with a client, I'll usually start them with some type of press. So let's say it's a barbell military press, right? And then I'll move on to a dumbbell lateral raise, for example, for the medial deltoid. And then I'll move on to a rear delt dumbbell raise for the posterior deltoid. And then I'll go back and I'll say, okay, now I'm going to go back to the anterior deltoid and I'm going to do a dumbbell shoulder press. And now I'm going to go back to the medial deltoid. I'm going to go a seated lateral raise, or maybe a unilateral raise on a cable. And then I'm going to go back to the rear delts and I might do a cable rear delt fly. Okay. I'm just naming off exercises for these muscle groups. And then I'll finish off the workout with a rope upright row, or maybe a barbell upright row. Although I recommend a rope cable upright row. It's a little bit easier on the rotator cuffs and the trapezius. And that right there is 7 exercises for your shoulders. And you've worked each head with 2 different exercises. And what's happening is, because if you yourself have a rotator cuff injury, you're creating symmetry throughout the muscle. So you're not just prioritizing your anterior, you're not just prioritizing your medial, you're not just prioritizing your posterior, you're working them evenly. So you're not going to have any muscular imbalances. You're also giving each head enough time to recover before you hit it again. So if you do a basic straight set and you do, let's say, 4 sets of barbell military press, and then you move on to the standing lateral raises with the dumbbells, 4 sets of that, and then the bent over rear delt flies. Well, by the time you get back now for your, say, your dumbbell shoulder press and your next exercise, which would be your fourth exercise, your anterior deltoids have recovered enough after doing the medial deltoid and posterior deltoid to stimulate new muscle growth. At the same time, you're resting it enough. So you're not going to create any further problems or potential muscular imbalances within the rotator cuff. So when you're training your shoulders, that's how I'd recommend training them, especially if you are dealing with a rotator cuff injury. Even if you're not dealing with a rotator cuff injury, if you want to avoid rotator cuff injuries, I promise you this, in my opinion, it really does work. And I've done it with clients for years. I've never had a client complain to me about a shoulder problem before, or a shoulder issue that they've experienced in the gym anyway with me. And I truly believe it's because we balance all the muscles we're working and we hit them in a proper sequence. Okay. So just remember, you've got your anterior head, your medial head, your posterior head, and your trapezius. So every shoulder workout should consist of at least 4 exercises, although I like to do 7. Okay. And make sure that you're working each head evenly and don't stimulate one head more than the other. Okay. You always want to make sure that you're balancing out the muscle groups that you're working because you don't want to create further muscular imbalances because that will lead to potential injury down the line. Okay. Okay, a few more questions. Okay. Nick, is it better to do heavy lifting or high reps for arm growth? Well, both. I mean, what does heavy lifting mean? I mean, to me, you can still lift heavy. I think there's a big misconception here because when I tell people to stay within that 10 to 15 rep range, they automatically assume, oh, it's lightweight. No. When I say 10 to 15 rep range, you should still be lifting heavy weight. The weight should still be challenging. It shouldn't be some easy weight. Okay. The reason I tell people to stay away from single digits is because you're more at risk for injury doing single digit reps because that means the weight is, in my opinion, too heavy for you. And you're not really going to create any muscle growth. You're going to create some strength, but you're not going to really create any solid, lean, dense muscle by doing 3 reps or doing 4 reps. So in the case of arms, my recommendation is to keep the weights heavy, but heavy enough that you can still get a minimum of 10 and a maximum of 15 reps. Okay. Make sure you warm up. One thing I like to do with my arm training is I like to superset my arms. So I'll do a set of, let's say, rope extensions and I'll go and do some barbell curls. And I'll do that 4 times. And I'll move on to maybe some straight bar press downs and I'll do some easy bar curls 4 times each. And then I'll move on to maybe some seated dumbbell curls and I'll throw in some skull crushers, whatever it is. But I like to superset my arms. So it's almost like a cardiovascular workout. The one thing, if you really want to build your arms, do not overtrain them. Okay. And this goes out to men specifically because I know so many guys in the gym, they'll spend 2 hours training their arms. And to me, my arm workouts are never longer than 30 minutes max. Because the way I look at arm training is I already work my shoulders for 1 full workout, my chest for 1 full workout, my back for 2 separate workouts each week. I had that pull down day and the row day that I talked about earlier. So those are four workouts right there where I'm already working my arms indirectly. When I do a row, even though I'm the primary muscle group is my back, the secondary muscle group, also known as the synergist muscle group, would be my biceps. So my biceps are getting some work on a back day. When I do a press, whether it's a chest press or a shoulder press, on either of those days, my triceps are working indirectly. They're the synergist muscle group for my shoulders and for my pecs. So my triceps are getting work indirectly. So then when it comes down to working arms on their own day, my arms have already been hit indirectly throughout those 4 other workouts. Hell, I probably don't even need to train my arms because I'm working them indirectly, but I still like to work them because I don't want to create any muscular imbalances, as I mentioned in the previous question. Okay. So do not overtrain your arms. It's a big mistake that a lot of guys make. It's a mistake I made when I was a teenager. I used to spend like 2 hours training my arms, and I still see guys doing that today. And I understand why, because you think, oh, if I do more, I'll get bigger arms. No, the opposite's going to happen. Your body, your arms are going to go into an almost like a catabolic state because they're going to be so exhausted. So they're going to actually decrease in size, not increase in size. So make sure that you're stimulating your biceps and triceps properly. The most important piece of advice I could tell you when you're training your arms is it's so important to establish that mind to muscle connection. So when you're doing a curl, for example, your mind should be in that bicep. When you're doing a press down, your mind should be in that tricep. It shouldn't be watching the TV in the gym. It shouldn't be, talking to your gym neighbor. It should be really focusing on tapping into that muscle group. Because remember, we use our arms throughout the day so much. We also use them, as I mentioned, in your upper body workouts. So if you really want to stimulate new muscle growth in them, you have to really tap in there and create that motor neurons right down, those receptors in your motor neurons right down to the case of the brachialis or the back head tricep. So you're really stimulating muscle growth. Okay. So really focus on that mind to muscle connection. Don't go crazy high volume, crazy like ridiculous reps where you're only getting 3 reps. Keep the workouts 30, maybe 40 minutes max for your arms if you're training them on their own day. Superset them if you can, especially if you're in a private gym, even better, okay? Because you're going to use your time more efficiently. And watch, your arms will grow. They do grow like that. I promise you, I've seen it time and time again, and I've done it myself. All right, last question. Okay, Nick, my workouts currently consist of exercises done on machines. My friend told me that free weight workouts are much more effective, though. Do you think using free weights is better than machines if I want to build more muscle? Okay, so machines have their place, but that place is always second to free weights. Why? Let's use squats, for example. Okay, let's compare a barbell back squat to a Smith machine squat. There's a lot of people that say, well, a Smith machine squat is just as effective. Not at all, not even close. When you're doing a barbell squat, not only do you have to lift that weight, as in squat down to the floor and come back up, you have to focus on your balance. You have to focus on your coordination. You have to focus on your stability. So how do you do that? Well, you have to focus on using your stabilizer muscles. Now, in the case of a squat, your stabilizer muscles would be your glutes and hamstrings and quads. When you're doing a Smith machine squat, it's like a ride. You don't even have to focus on balancing anything because the machine dictates the movement for you. So to a degree, you are working the muscle. And some people will say, well, that's safer. Well, if you're someone who's an experienced lifter, you shouldn't be looking for what's safer because you yourself, I'm assuming, are trained properly. So you know how to practice proper form and technique. Okay. And I don't even like to throw beginners on Smith machines because I find that teaches bad habits. So I actually recommend that if you can, the majority, if not all of your workout should consist of using free weights, as in barbells, dumbbells, and some cable movements, right? But not machines. I've never really been a big fan of hammer strength machines. I've used them in the past, but I never found that they really offered any benefits. Now, if you're someone who's dealing with an injury, and you find that maybe doing a bench press on your own, or you don't have a spotter and you feel uneven, or you feel like unsure, I should say, sorry, doing a bench press because you don't have that spotter and you want to go for maybe a new weight and you want to use a machine, I'd say fine, do it. But I really feel that you can maximize your growth in the gym by sticking to free weights for the simple reason that you are using your stabilizers. And not only that, are you going to build more muscle? You're also going to burn more calories because let's face it, if you do a barbell, again, we'll use the squat again, squat analogy. If you do a barbell back squat versus Smith machine squat, you're going to notice that you get gassed a lot more easily doing the barbell back squat because you're really focused on doing that exercise and you're exerting way more energy to balance that bar on your back. Okay. Smith machine, not so much. Okay. So you're going to burn more calories doing free weights than machines. On machines, you're just sitting there and you're just pushing the movement, right? The machine is dictating the movement for you. So if you're doing, let's say, an incline hammer strength machine in the gym, yeah, you're going to work your pectoralis major to a degree, but you're going to get way more out of doing an incline barbell bench press where you have to stabilize and balance that weight. So I would agree with your friend, and I would tell you that I wouldn't tell you necessarily to stop doing machines because, like I said, machines have their place. I always say they're second, but I would say that the majority of the exercises you do should be done with using dumbbells, barbells, and cables. You're really going to see that dense, solid, lean muscle growth by just using those tools. Okay. All the other stuff, again, to me is just fluff. You don't need it. People like to see it. People love, they like the feeling on the machines. But at the end of the day, you're not working your stabilizers and you're not going to build that same type of muscle that you see a lot of guys and women create by incorporating free weights into their routines. Anyway, that's it for this week's No Filter Q&A. This episode will be going up on Monday, January the 6th. As a reminder, if you have any questions related to your nutritional plan, workout program, supplements you are currently taking, not taking, or considering taking, please feel free to email me those questions at nick@foreverfitperformance.com, or you can DM me your questions on my Instagram at @fitcosgrove_. Thank you all for watching. Thank you for supporting my YouTube channel, my online coaching business, my in-house personal training business here in Vancouver, British Columbia. I truly do appreciate all the support. Thank you all once again, and I will see you all next week. Bye for now.